This meeting is for council members to review and discuss important issues, projects, and future council meeting agenda items. It's a work-study session only and allows the council to hear input from city staff. No action will be taken at this workshop, and there will not be an opportunity for public comment. This meeting is streaming live on Glendale's Facebook and YouTube pages and the city's cable television station, Glendale Channel 11. Thank you for joining us.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Glendale City Council Workshop Session, May 13, 2025. The meeting is called to order. We will conduct a roll call. Councilmember Baldonegro.
Here.
Councilmember Conchas.
Present.
Councilmember Guzman.
Here.
Councilmember Milner.
Present.
Councilmember Turner. Okay. Vice Mayor.
Here.
And I'm present. Everyone is accounted for. With that, Ms. Bauer, would you take us right into item number 1?
Council item of special interest, partnership with Luke Air Force Base to build an indoor small arms range.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. We have 2 items on today's workshop session. The first one's going to be presented by Ryan Lee, Intergovernmental Programs Director.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Mayor, council members, good afternoon. This presentation is a follow-up to Mayor Wires' council item of special interest, specifically exploring a partnership with Luke Air Force Base on the construction and operation of a small arms range or an indoor shooting range. Just to give a brief summary of the presentation today, we'll go through and quickly review the scoping document that was approved by the mayor last year, evaluate the aspects of a joint firing range, consider a location, and then the next steps into the planning and identifying of funds. I know there's a lot here, so to summarize, Luke Air Force Base approached the city of Glendale in late 2023, expressing an interest in partnering with the city to construct a small shooting range, an indoor range. Mayor Wires, myself, and a member of the Glendale Police Department went and visited the Fairchild Air Force Base joint range with Spokane County, Washington. And there we were introduced to the concept of a joint range. At that point, Mayor Wires brought back the council item of special interest, and then we presented to the council back in March of last year. So as we've gone through the last year of working with Luke Air Force Base, seeking clarification from the Department of Defense and the Department of the Air Force, what we have since learned is that the Department of Defense requires a cost share between parties. Generally, that number is to be no less than 20%, but ultimately the Air Force will weigh the benefits against the cost. So how much are they paying for their members to be trained safely, efficiently, and in one location versus going to different locations throughout Maricopa County. So we threw in that 20% really as a placeholder, but that number could change, but we wouldn't know that until we entered into negotiations. So what would the scope of a partnership be between Luke Air Force Base and the city of Glendale? The partnership model contemplates that the city funds the project and then manages the building and enters into a service agreement with Luke Air Force Base, referenced as a range as a service. So essentially the city owns and operates the facility, and Luke, through a long-term agreement, rents out that space, which is then used to reimburse the city for their share of the cost of capital and operations and maintenance. The city and Luke Air Force Base would then coordinate shared training times and schedule management for continuity of training for all parties. Luke Air Force Base would have staff there to help with the scheduling and the training and oversight of the building. So what does a joint range look like? At this time, and subject to change with negotiations, Luke Air Force Base and the Department of the Air Force have identified a need for 21 firing lanes. They would have a PA system, a munitions and storage room, vaulted weapons storage room, classroom space, restrooms, kitchen and break room, office space, laundry and shower facilities, a welcome greeting space, and then external features like your parking lots, sidewalks, curbs, gutter, covered parking, and so on. So again, a major operation here that would benefit both the city of Glendale and Luke Air Force Base. So as we identify places where this could potentially go, there is city-owned land just southwest of of Gripstick, the Glendale Regional Public Safety Training Center. You'll recall that this area is under recent contract for mining operations, and part of the agreement was that the operator would move dirt up to the gray or the pink portion of land right off of Glendale Avenue, and that land has been brought up to grade, but it's has yet to be studied. The grading and engineering, water availability, sewer, and so on have not been studied. We just have the dirt up to grade. And so part of the recommendation to the city council today would be to conduct a feasibility study using the engineering department and their staff expertise to determine the impact of this land and what would be needed for construction. So we talked about the city's investment of time over the last year and trying to understand what would be required of the city. Luke Air Force Base has also been presented with a new opportunity. This is relatively new for them as well. So they've shown their commitment by entering into a service agreement with a firm called Salas O'Brien. And this firm assists military installations across the country in designing these types of operations and then entering into, contract negotiations. And so Luke Air Force Base has procured this company who would then work with the city of Glendale as we ensure proper facility use, design, construction, and environmental regulations, making sure that those are achieved. So let's talk a little bit about funding. We'll turn it over to Deputy City Manager Rick St. John.
Thanks, Ryan. So the obvious funding source would be general obligation public safety bonds. Looking at the debt service for general obligation bonds over 20 years, a $20 million project would end up costing the city $27 million. So the $7 million would be the interest on the bonds. If, for example, a 20% local share is agreed upon by the Department of Defense, Glendale's annual share would be around $500,000 plus an estimated $300,000 in employee and consumable costs for the range. The current Public Safety Bond Authority is about $126 million, and what we have built into the 10-year CIP is about $132 million worth of projects. So this project, if included, would widen that gap, and it would be something we would have to deal with sometime down the road. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions, and as a reminder, we are looking for consensus to conduct the feasibility study and to enter into formal negotiations with the Department of Air Force.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. A few questions. Specifically, who would be allowed to use this facility?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, it would be the Glendale Police Department and Luke Air Force Base personnel.
Okay. No public use, no other employee use, or anything along those lines?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, that is correct.
Okay. So I noticed the proposed location is right across the street from our regional public training facility, Gripstick. Is there not a location, a site within the Gripstick footprint in which this could be built and not have us do the land cost?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, we did master plan the Gripstick site last year, and the space within the Gripstick properties are contemplated for other projects. So there is not space at the Gripstick.
Okay. Has there been any outreach to other police departments in our area to see whether or not they would want to participate in the joint use of this?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, I've spoken to Surprise, Peoria, Goodyear. There was some interest from Goodyear to enter into a partnership with Luke and build an indoor range. The other cities did not have an interest. Peoria already has an indoor range.
Okay.
Could I interrupt for a second? Was your question, any other cities, would they be allowed to use this if there was an agreement, or only with Luke? What was your question exactly?
Have we had outreach to other cities to see if they have an interest in sharing in this facility with us?
Okay.
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, there has not been a lot of interest.
Okay. And then the cost sharing between us and the Air Force, best case scenario would be that the city of Glendale pays 20% and the Air Force picks up 80%? Is that correct?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, yes, that's correct.
And under that best case scenario, Glendale's portion would be $800,000 a year for 20 years?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, by the math, yes, that is about right.
But, so that's the best case scenario. If the Air Force decides that the benefit isn't 80% to them, but 50% or 20% or something, then the cost could go up. Our share of the cost would go up.
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, through the negotiation, we would talk about a lot of different things. We would talk about wear and tear on the building. We talk about our cost for operating the building, the consumables, and we would try to recover as much of our cost as we could, but it would depend on Luke Air Force Base and their current cost for training their personnel. So there has to be an upside for Luke Air Force Base, and generally the upside is an 80% buy-in with the local municipality paying about 20%. But that's negotiable.
Okay, so it could be more for the city and less for the Air Force. Do you offhand, you may not have researched this, and it's fine if you didn't. Do you know how many other agreements like this there are around the country with cities and an Air Force base or a military base?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Turner, there is an agreement in place with Spokane County and Fairchild Air Force Base. That's more of almost a 50-50 split, because at that point, Spokane County was planning to build their own grip stick, if you will. And so the Air Force picked up the vast majority, almost 100% of the firing range, with the agreement that there would be shared space throughout that public safety training center. This would be uniquely different in the sense that we're building a standalone facility, and so there would be a cost share that we'd have to negotiate.
Okay, but as far as you know, and you may not have researched it, as far as you know, there aren't any other, besides Spokane, any other partnership agreements like this?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, no.
Thank you. I'm done.
Question?
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Mayor. So basically, I'm not sure I understand the cost sharing. So the example you gave on slide 9, the city share, so $500,000, you're saying that'd be our share of the debt service? And then on top of that, $300,000 for O&M?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, correct.
So our share of the 27 million, 20% of that would be about $5.5 million, somewhere in there. Does our police department need an indoor firing range?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, looking at the capital improvement plan or capital investment plan that we have, the CIP, we don't have an indoor shooting range currently within that plan. There are other buildings and structures that we need to take priority over an indoor shooting range. Having said that, of course, an indoor shooting range would be of benefit for the Glendale Police Department. During the hot summer months, they'd still be able to train. Currently, we take a period of time off when it's most hot, and we don't do outdoor shooting, except for our tactical team, who trains all year round because they have to be ready. This would provide an opportunity for year-round firearms training.
Okay, Mayor, if I could continue. That's what you just said is what my concern is. I mean, while I understand and I value the partnership that we have with Luke Air Force Base, I'm concerned about what other items in the CIP could get possibly, what kind of timeline, I guess that would be important for me to know, is what kind of timeline are they, it doesn't sound like this is looking to do something, down towards the end of our 10-year CIP. So then my concern is that projects that we've got in our CIP are going to get pushed back because this is going to take priority. So what kind of timeline are we looking at for this?
Mayor, Vice Mayor Tomachoff, really at the speed that we could go in a responsible manner and understanding what, if that land is available, if it could be built on, what the Air Force would agree to, and then what our construction timeline could be.
Okay, but I mean, are they looking to do this, this is like, they've already engaged in a consultant. So I get the idea that this, this is going to take priority over some other things that we have in our CIP. So for me, it would be important to know, what are those things? Would it be the forensics lab? Would it be, what, I would have to know that before I would say, where is this going to fit into the CIP and what other projects are going to get deprioritized to move this ahead? That would be something I would want to know.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, I think if provided consensus by the council today to do the feasibility study, we would work with engineering to determine the timeline for construction and how that impacts other projects that are in the hopper.
So when you bring that back to us, that would be part of the discussion, is that these projects would have to be delayed. Obviously, there's not enough funding for everything that's already in there, and then you have inflation and other accelerators. So, you know, whatever we show that we're short for all the projects now, by the end of the 10-year CIP, the gap's going to be wider. We know that. So as long as you bring that back to us and let us actually look at what we're being asked to delay and push back, and that push back where we may not even have a funding source for it anymore, that would be very important for me to know. But if that's going to be part of what comes back to us, I'm okay with moving it ahead. Thank you, Mayor.
More of a comment. I believe that for me, this project is a win-win, a win for our police department to be able to utilize this facility, especially during the hot summer months when they don't have any other place to go. I know there are some costs associated with it, and I'm very much in favor of moving it forward for the feasibility study and the additional information to come back and be able to analyze this a little further once we have more details on the costs and the agreements and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple more questions come to mind. Did you mention that Peoria has an indoor training range for their officers?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, yes, it is very small, but they do have an indoor range.
Have we approached Peoria about utilizing time in their range for our officers?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, we have not.
Okay. How many police officers do we have on our force that would benefit from this training?
Mayor, Councilmember Turner, 452, I believe.
Okay. So what's 800,000 divided by 452? Well, if my math is right, it's about I'm not sure of that math, $1,769 maybe. My concern is this is a lot of money. I'd like us to see if we can satisfy our local need in other ways, like maybe coordinating with Peoria or something like that to use an existing range, or with the private market to use an existing range during times that we would perhaps lease ourselves, so that would be nobody but our officers in there, because I can see some safety issues around that. And the other thing is, it just seems to me that we should look at a big picture. What else could our police department benefit from to the tune of $800,000 a year that isn't in our plan yet, or they haven't asked for, and would, if they knew this money could be $800,000 a year could be available? A minimum of 800. It could cost us more, but best case scenario, 800. And when I ask about Gripstick and no space there, and we just did a master plan for Gripstick, it seems to me if the need for a indoor shooting range was a priority, it would have been included in the Gripstick master plan update. So I'm going to have a hard time supporting this. If you want to move forward simply to get more facts and figures, I could support it that far, but it's going to be a high bar for me unless there's some other compelling information. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll tell everybody how this started. I do a lot of ride-alongs with our police officers. Here lately, not as many, but mainly because it's getting warm. And I was talking with the officer I was riding with, it's been at least a year and a half now, maybe 2 years, and I'd asked him about staying proficient with his weapon. And he said they do it pretty much. And I said, well, exactly what do you mean by pretty much? He goes, well, summer we don't, but what we do in the fall and the winter and in the spring. My concern more than anything, for just get rid of the price tag altogether, is the fact that we're putting our officers into a position, if they're not proficient, that they could accidentally take someone's life that they didn't intend to, or lose their life. And both of those are incredibly, incredibly concerning to me. I can't think of a reason in the world how we could ever say we allow them to practice, but not in the summertime, so therefore I guess we're not going to have any crime in the summertime. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. This is the first opportunity that I've heard where we can get a huge majority of this paid for, and the bottom line is they're going to pay us to operate it. They're going to pay us for utilities, and when it's done, it's still ours. We own that property. We're going to own that property for the next God knows how long. So it's not a 10-year and then you're done. This property is going to be there for a long time. I think we owe it to our officers. I think we owe it to our citizens to pursue this. And then on top of that, this happens to be Public Officer Safety Week, or I don't remember exactly what the title is, but we're supposed to be taking care of our officers, and we're supposed to recognize them. I can't think of a better way to send this thing out to get more information, so we can do that. And then we have our Luke Air Force Base. They're looking for partners. Our city, just so everybody's clarified, so everybody understands, our city would manage the operation of the facility. They would do the scheduling, working with Luke. So it's not a matter of we have our guys out there doing what they do, Luke having their guys out there at the same. It doesn't work that way. It's all programmed, everything's scheduled. And to answer the other question, if another agency wanted to come out and use our facility, we have the ability that we could rent space to them. We could actually charge them. So there's a lot of opportunities that I think are here that people are missing. And then let me finish up with this. I'm not going to say that everybody didn't have a part in our last bond election, but I can tell you I worked my butt off to make sure our public safety got what they were looking for, and I'm certainly willing to give it 110% the next time we come back for public safety for whatever new things that come up that we need to finance. And I was going to finish here, but I'm not. The last thing I was thinking is we will be getting money from Luke each and every year until that's paid off. And so you can't discount the fact that if they're giving us money each year, that we have to account for that. So the numbers are smaller than what you're hearing. Yes, they're bigger when you have to write the check, but they're going to be smaller as far as the amount of money that's owed. Do you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Mayor. So if this is, and I understand the heat is is an obstacle for outdoor firing range practice. So have we ever looked to, as Councilmember Turner suggested, rent space from a private shooter's world or any place like that to rent the place out for our officers to use for? Have we ever looked for an alternative for where our officers could practice firing during the hot months of summer?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, not to my knowledge.
So that's a little puzzling to me. If it's that big of a problem, why haven't we looked into that? And then the other thing I find puzzling is that this doesn't exist in our CIP. And if it was something that we really need, and if we needed, I find it strange that it doesn't exist in our CIP. It wasn't part of the Gripstick Master Plan. So I think, and I want to support Luke Air Force Base as much as anybody, but I also don't want to cut short what we have already planned in our CIP. So like I said, I'm fine with moving ahead to get more information, but I do find it puzzling that we have never looked for some place where our officers could train during the hot summer months firing indoors somewhere. There's lots of places where you could do that, where you could just rent the facility out for our officers. And it doesn't exist. It wasn't part of the Gripstick Master Plan, and it's not in our CIP. So it doesn't appear to me that it was a priority for anybody until now. Thank you.
Mayor.
Go ahead.
Mayor.
Go ahead.
My question, Mayor and Council, is for the City Attorney. So in terms of the cost sharing agreement, have you reviewed an IGA or a proposal for this cost sharing agreement?
Mayor, Councilmember Conchas, no, I have not. So that would probably be something that, as it's negotiated, it will go through my office before it comes back to the council, and I can give more detail then.
Thank you. And then, of course, we all want Luke Air Force Base to be here forever and for a long time, but what guarantees are there that Luke Air Force Base doesn't leave and then leave us with this bill? So I think the contract and understanding that would be really good. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Baldenegro.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand Vice Mayor's concern and Councilmember Turner's concern. My concern about going to a private place or a private facility is I am sure we don't want everyone to know who our undercover officers are. I'm sure that's a big deal. So they're going to have to go train, I'm assuming, as well. We want to make sure that we are able to have having a facility of our own where we can make sure that we know that no one sees who we have their training is kept a secret, whether undercover or whatever it is. So that's another part. I wouldn't be comfortable sending our officers to a facility that could have security cameras in there for everything else, and I don't think that's a good idea. And then for us to have that in where we control it, I think is important, so that we know we're getting our, no pun intended, bang for our buck versus, giving money somewhere else where then all of a sudden they're saying, well, there's these restrictions and this and that. And well, no, we can coordinate it however and often as we like. And for me, coming from a sports background, where practices where you take your time under controlled situations to really explain in detail what you guys are doing, so that when it comes game time, you're prepared, you're relaxed, you're ready. And to say there's an off season for police officers, which is the hot months, where we can now there is no off season, we're able to have them training year round, I think is a great idea, so that we're not having to put them in any kind of situation, or any of us where, if we just had more, time for them to train. I think this is a great idea that I look forward to being able to work this in somewhere.
Mayor, we aren't here to vote for the facility. We're here to vote, to have a consensus.
We're not voting.
Right, that's what I mean.
Consensus for them
Right,
to
we're
get
not voting.
more information.
We just want a consensus to come back and give us more information. So
Basically.
I absolutely could support that.
Okay, thank you. I'll make one final statement, Mr. Conscious. Once DOD signs that contract, it's a contract. And so they were talking about, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a 10-year with 2 10-year options?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, that is correct. There's a 10-year repayment schedule for the Fairchild Spokane agreement, and then there's a 20-year operations and maintenance agreement as well.
Which is the electricity, the water, the labor, things like that, running it.
Correct.
Okay. So with that said, we're a 10-year turnaround payback, but each year we're getting money back. So, for anybody to think that we have to stop everything we're doing, it doesn't make sense to me. We possibly may not be able to do some things right up front, but in 5 years, we already got half the money back, and I don't think we have all of our projects are scheduled in the next 5 years. So I think there is an opportunity. And again, we're going to have to go out for public safety money on a bond probably in the next 2 or 3 years. I certainly have no problem with supporting it and promoting it. I'm not looking to cancel any other events or any other buildings or structures, but to me, how can anybody not do whatever possible to make certain that our officers are safe, and that when they go out, the best opportunity, the best outcome will be because of their proficiency? I think we owe that to our citizens. So I'm going to ask for a consensus to move this forward.
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you.
Council item of special interest, heat illness prevention plan for city employees and contractors.
Mayor, members of the council, to provide staff report on this, Assistant City Manager Jamshid Mehta.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This is a council item of interest. Back in February, Councilmember Conchas had requested an item of interest to examine current policies related to protecting City of Glendale employees and those employees working for contractors on city projects during extreme heat conditions. Now, the city does have a very detailed heat illness protection plan, and I will summarize that for you in the over the next slide. But the other question that was also asked was if the city would also protect the health of our contractors' employees by some arrangement. So on this slide here, the Glendale's current heat illness prevention plan is summarized. It's back in 2016 when the last review and when the last review was done. And there might have been other plans prior to that as well that I'm not familiar with, but this is what we are following. It's quite detailed. It takes into consideration everything that comes through OSHA guidelines and also the state's OSHA type requirements. It applies to all our departments that have any kind of field work associated with their day-to-day duties. And as detailed as it is, it includes aspects such as responsibilities. So employees and supervisors, not only just the field workers, but also the director has responsibilities within each of their respective departments. And so does the HR's risk management division. They're all involved in playing a role here. There's an aspect of training, the training that recognizes not only signs and symptoms of how heat illness is to be recognized out in the field and how quickly procedures can be put in place to handle any medical emergencies. Supervisors also ensure that staff has adequate potable water, take breaks as needed, and have access to shade, and what at times is, and that shade could at times be the city employee's air-conditioned vehicle as well. So if employees are new to the field or that kind of work and they've just been promoted into that role, or we have existing employees, for example, who've been away from work for a considerable amount of time, there's also a clause in here which deals with acclimatization, which means their supervisor will be fine giving them limited exposure out in the heat, and then once they get used to it, they can then work the full hours. So these aspects are already in place. There's also a requirement for maintaining records that each of the respective departments, they have their own records. They forward that to the Human Resources Risk Management Division. If there's need for making any changes or additional training, then that kicks in after reviewing those records and doing an audit. So our heat illness prevention plan, I would say it's done very well over the years to protect our team out in the field. Our heat illness prevention plan, which generally reflects the federal OSHA guidelines that has been in place for a very long time. However, these federal rules as they stand today, they haven't been finalized. Those guidelines were issued. They went through a rulemaking process, but at this time, at least from the federal perspective, it's sort of frozen, I guess is what the term is. At the state level, Arizona's division of OSHA does have a program that is required of all employers. That's us and also our contractors. So whoever has workers out in the field, it would apply to them. The state requires every employer to have a heat plan and require all the other elements of safety in that plan. Once again, it's water, rest, shade, acclimatization, and of course training to recognize signs and symptoms of heat stress. The state has what we call targeted inspection program, but to date, this organization, ADOSH, the state's version of OSHA, they have not had to inspect or cite the city or any of its any of our on-site contractors for not having adhered to a heat illness prevention plan. Now, there are other jurisdictions, and there are 3 here that I've identified, Phoenix, Tucson, and Pima County. A 4th jurisdiction, City of Tempe, is also considering having something very similar, and all 3, in fact, all 4 of them are essentially mirror images of each other, and I'll go through what those do cover. So they have imposed heat safety requirements on not only their employees, but also their contractors. And I don't know what the status of their original employee safety plan was, or if they had one, or how effective it is. Haven't had that opportunity, and it's only been less than a year since these 3 other jurisdictions have even had such an ordinance, so it's sort of hard to figure whether it's been effective or not. But these 3 jurisdictions in the last year, they did adopt these new ordinances, and as I said, they are very similar to each other. The ordinances, they require clauses in all city solicitations. So if we are doing an RFP for any kind of major construction work requiring a contractor, we would require that they respond in their bids or in their responses through in terms of their qualifications, that they would have a heat mitigation plan within their submittals. And again, the contractor would need a heat plan that covers the same elements again: rest, breaks, water, shade, acclimatization, and training. Now, these ordinances, they go further than what we've seen over here, which is that they are placing responsibility upon the city's department, whoever they're working with, to ensure that the contractor's employees are being protected by the contractor. If that city or county department's inspector sees an issue, they would bring it to the attention of that contractor, and if the situation remains unresolved, then the issue is escalated. Depending on the terms of the contract, it will go to the procurement officer, and then depending on what else is in the contract, it could be additional periods to cure, more warnings, or ultimately even termination of contract. I don't know if these ordinances are effective. As I said, it's barely been a year, so we really don't have any record on that. So essentially what we have is a very good heat illness prevention plan for our own workers in the city. Now I'd like to show you how the contractor's employees could also be protected during the warm season, okay? I have 3 suggestions here. Those could be your point of discussion or consensus. You could have a variation between these A, B, and C, or something totally different. That's fine. But this is just like a starting point for that discussion, if you like, if you may. As you know, all employers, including contractors, are required to abide by ADOSH requirements. That's us, that's the contractors as well. So they require a heat plan with all the elements that we've been talking about. So that's choice A. In the current situation, the contractor takes care of their employees while working on a city job. Now, we got some statistics from ADOSH. In 2024, the state, they made 104 inspections statewide. They cited 2 employers for violations of the state's heat-related rules. Now, moving to choice B, where the city would require language in the contractor's bids, proposals, and final contract that they will maintain a heat plan, and the contractor would be responsible for implementing that plan to protect their employees. But in choice C, which is what the 3 other jurisdictions have in their ordinances, the responsibility to monitor, to inspect, and report the contractor's heat plan-related violations, those shift to the city's department. If the contractor, after being advised of non-compliance, does not demonstrate that it has taken appropriate corrective action, then the procurement director can notify OSHA or ADOSH and may take action that could include termination of the contract. So given A, B, and C, but let me also brief you real quick on how we do inspections today. All contracted work is inspected by our staff for the performance, to meet the scope, and for accepting the final product. There are many jobs where we do not watch over the contractors' workers in the field, and I'll give you an example. Take all our landscape contractors, whether they're working on our park projects or in the street right-of-way. The contractor has a plan that we've submitted to them. They're going to plant trees, bushes, put down the irrigation system. When the project is done, and those could be along the arterial streets or it could be in our major parks, our staff would then go to accept that final product, and if it's not done right, they would have to redo it. But our staff would not be standing over them or watching over them to see if, in fact, everything that the contractor, the employer of those workers, have they installed all the appropriate things that are needed over there. You can always have a person drive by and see, yes, there's shade, and I see a bucket of water, but have they really taken the breaks at the right time? We wouldn't have staff in our current form of doing things to be able to go and monitor that. Another example would be with perhaps more of our sophisticated projects. What I mean by that is when you got water plant and wastewater treatment plant, there's some very sophisticated equipment being repaired or installed at that. In those instances, it's not our staff who's actually going to be there out in the field inspecting the work. It would be third-party inspectors. Those would be our city's representatives doing project administration on our behalf. So in those cases, what happens today is the general contractor will have to follow the ADOSH rules, and our third-party contractor would be also required to follow those same ADOSH requirement rules. To put this in perspective, just my last statement here, on an average given day, the city has anything between 90 to 110 active contracted work sites. So roughly 100 at any point in time. To assume the responsibility of monitoring the contractor's heat plan while their workers are on city jobs, I think would be very challenging. And with that, Mayor and council members, glad to answer any questions you may have.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much for bringing all of this together, and I really appreciate Glendale and how forward-facing we were in 2016, because as was mentioned, other municipalities, Phoenix, Tucson, Pima County, and Tempe in process are barely new to this. You said about 2 or 3 years, correct? But the city of Glendale has been doing this since 2016, and it's one of the best plans that I have seen in the entire state of Arizona. So I think that it needs to be commended, and it's really great because there's also the annual audit process that's already in the plan. And so this is a really good piece of policy that already exists. And the only thing that we're asking is if we, for example, I heard that there were 2 out of 140 sites across the state that were not in compliance. And so even though it's 2, that's still workers that didn't have access to all of these things, including cold water, shade, things like that while they're on the work site in up to 117 degrees heat. So I do completely understand that it is not the city's responsibility or for us to go and inspect work sites. But I think that since they already need to comply with ODASH, that means that they should already have a heat plan, and that's why I would like to ask the council for consensus on A, B, and C, or A and B, or a combination of the three. But I think that in speaking to the city attorney this morning, the word indemnification came up so that we can make sure that we put those into our contracts and ask our contractors and their contracts and to at least know that this heat illness prevention plan exists, and then indemnify the city of any responsibility from there. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Question for you, of A, B, and C, which one is the city currently doing right now?
Mayor, it would be the A right now, which is the contractors are required to abide by the state's requirements. They have to maintain a heat illness prevention plan while working on any project, city project.
With that said, on the contract, does it make the contractor sign the ADOS agreement?
The contracts generally do not spell out all types of federal or state requirements, but most contracts will have a statement in that, and city attorney might correct me on this if I'm wrong, but there are requirements where all state and federal laws and requirements will be met. So that's generally standard language.
Mayor and council, that is correct. What I could suggest is that we could actually expressly state that they need to comply with a policy such as this, similar to what the state does and requires us to put specific language with regards to the Uyghurs and or Israel. We could put specific language in our contracts if that's what the council desired.
If we did A with that, I'd be totally fine with that myself. Mr. Phelps?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Conchas, first of all, thank you for the acknowledgement of the existing plan, because I think it is very good, and the data shows that it is protecting our workers. The staff in reviewing this feels like the option B actually would be beneficial in that we can, within our RFPs, request them to identify their plan. And so that, I think, helps remind our contractors that we're monitoring this, and this is an important, an important value for the city of Glendale. Obviously, we have language that says you must abide by all the different agencies that monitor the work they do, but by specifically calling out a plan that they can identify in there also means that they could take and adopt the existing state, but it also means they may want to choose to exceed the safety measures as part of their plan. And so it gives us something really to help in our evaluation of the contractors. So we're very comfortable with really taking it to the next level on level B, just having specific language in there. We think it's a good reminder to our contractors that we value their employees the same way we value our employees. We want effort put forth on protecting of their rights. And so that's, even though we didn't come in with a staff recommendation here, in our discussions on this internally, we feel there would be value on option B. A already is happening, so it really would just be adding the additional clarification language. It would take some time to develop that in working with the city attorney's office, but we think we could come up with some good language that we could include in future RFQs where people are working outside.
Right, and my concern is that under no circumstance do we get ourselves in a position where if the contractor, the lead guy on that particular job didn't do his job, that they come back and say, well, we didn't monitor it and therefore we're responsible. That's my concern. You have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I too like option B. It seems to me that contractors that are working for us are probably working for other municipalities and other major corporations too, and things like that. So this isn't a matter of developing a customized plan for every contract they do. They would develop a plan that would probably cover all of central Arizona, southern Arizona, and all of that, and would just be something that they would normally do, and be able to include in any contract that required it. And I don't think that puts us at a liability, and I also would suggest that, which I also don't think puts us at a liability, that in this part of the contract that requires this, that we also require them to self-report to whatever department in the city they're working under any heat-related illnesses that occur on the job.
Any other
That's it.
questions?
I had a question. It's not a question, just a statement.
Go ahead.
I agree with either A or B. C, I can't agree with. I think it's too much, like you had stated, that it's too much extra work that the city has to do. If we have that many job sites that you're talking about, probably having to hire more people to just keep up with everything. Our plan is really good. I agree with the city manager that either A, but B, it's a reminder to them that they're, that we're concerned and that we're watching. And I agree with the mayor. I would not want the city to have to be responsible for that, and then it come back to us for liability reasons.
Who else? We have a consensus for B?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
Mayor, I'd like to ask for a consensus on the self-reporting addition to option B.
All right, the question is, go ahead.
Is that self-reporting when there is a failure, an incident, or self-reporting of every single day they're letting us know that we're in compliant? Or is it when there's an accident incident?
Self-reporting if there's an actual heat-related illness incident on the job that they're contracted with us for.
I guess my question then is self-reporting from the person who it's happened to, or the lead person on the job, or the contractor?
It would be the contractor's responsibility, however they manage it within their contract,
We have anything, Mike?
Mayor?
Hold on a second. Do we have anything like that right now in the contract? I know the contracts are awful thick, but anything, if there's an accident or anything like that, that they have to let us know?
Mayor and council, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but I'm going to ask Mr. Mehta. ADOSH would require, if I recall correctly, ADOSH would require, if there's a fatality on a job site, they're going to already have to report that to ADOSH. So
That is a requirement, that's
It's-
correct.
So there already is a reporting
Okay,
function.
but that's only on a fatality, that's not if there's an incident. Correct?
Mayor?
Well, if I may, Councilmember, just, if you're worried about an incident, I think then we're going down a path of what does an incident mean?
Well, and I think that's Mr. Turner's question, I think. You're welcome.
and I think that can be worked out. I'm just saying that it's something we should have. I didn't come with the language, folks, I just think it's the concept that if we have contractors that we're expecting to protect their employees on the jobs that our citizens are paying for, that we ought to be able to find out in some fashion whether they've been successful at it or not. And if they haven't been successful, let's put the onus on them to report it to us, rather than us having to hire staff in every department that would be available at any time of the day or night all over the city to manage it. So let's make them self-report. And then if they don't self-report and we find out about it, then we can act on it. Or if they do self-report, then we could raise our level of attention to that contractor or that project. But to have a requirement in paper, it's maybe something, but I think requiring them to let us know if they have neglected their responsibility is something that our taxpayers would want us to do. Thank you.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to highlight in our current emergency or heat illness prevention plan, there's the audit piece, which is section number 13. And as we said, this current plan is only for city employees, and the council, we're seeking consensus to include it into our contracts. It says, the audit process and findings shall be certified in writing. Any deficiency found shall be relayed to the department safety committee and the department head. So essentially, Councilmember Turner, I think that if we put this into as B into the contracts and having this as part of the heat illness prevention program, that it kind of already serves that purpose. But I understand exactly what you're talking about instead of with having a little bit of enforcement or reporting to it. So I think that if we do have consensus for B, then we could take all of this feedback back, and obviously it's going to be coming to a voting meeting. And we can ask questions and insert our recommendations in there. But that's a good point. Thank you, Councilmember Turner, and thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, sitting here thinking, I'm not having a problem with it. I'm having a problem trying to figure out exactly how do you come up with that. Maybe if we could have a consensus that we do all that, but with an explanation before we go to vote, that it would be, who do they report to? How soon do they have to report? How bad does it have to be? Some list of, I mean, you don't want them notifying the city that somebody had to put a Band-Aid on their finger. But there's got to be something that would be justifiable, that covers your concern and your concern, at the same time not bog us down in small stuff either.
Well, Mayor, a bandage on the finger is not a heat-related illness. We're talking about
It
heat-related illnesses.
is if you pass out and fall down, so.
Well, let's not be silly about this.
Okay.
This is an important issue, and I'm just suggesting that we take it that
Mr.
one tiny
Turner,
step farther.
I'm simply making a statement. I have no problem with what you're doing. I would like it to come back where we have some explanation before we vote. That's all I said.
And that's why we would get a consensus today for staff to include that.
And that's what I
in the-
asked for with that explanation when it comes back. But you don't have to be so defensive. I'm working with you here, yeah?
Mayor?
Go ahead.
I disagree with that. I think our businesses have enough regulation already. These incidences, you're required to have workers' comp. If you have an incident where you need some medical attention, that typically has to go through that process, and they're already reporting that. So we're asking our businesses to do an additional step to report it also to the city. I think it's not necessary. Those things are already taken care of when there's an incident. Plus, we would have to identify the incident. What is an incident? How would we define it? So I think that it's problematic, and I don't agree with adding that language to the contracts for our businesses that are working with us. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a comment also.
Go ahead.
I agree with Councilman Melnar. As a business owner, I mean, we do have to, if we have incidences, we do have to already report them to Workman's Comp. But what are we going to do with the fact that they report it to us? I mean, what are we doing with that? Are we doing something with it? That's the question.
Mayor?
You want to address that?
Well, I don't want to address, I just want to address the sentiment in terms of like, what are we going to be doing with it? Obviously, if there is an incident, then I think it's important for us to make sure that we look and see what happened and how could that be prevented, because I think that this is all about really saving lives in terms of making sure people are just abiding by ODASH. And so I think that if there is an incident, we could talk about whether or not they report back to the city, but obviously they have to report to ODASH. So that's a requirement that already exists.
Yes, but Councilman Conchas, they're reporting it to Workman's Comp. They're reporting it to the city, but we aren't fining them. We're not holding them liable. I mean, that's what I mean. I understand that, we want people to work under. Sorry. I know that we want the employees, the workers, to be working safely, but I think we're adding more responsibility to the city that doesn't need to be. They're already abiding by the ADOSH.
And if I could just respond really quickly, Mayor?
In response to that, yes.
Yes, just in response, Councilwoman. I think that if we, it hasn't happened now because people are abiding by the rules, but I believe that if we had the same contractor that had multiple violations that were reported over a certain amount of time, then when that contractor comes again for another bid or another contract, we could at least have that conversation with them in order to protect their employees in the future. So that would be my response.
Mr. Valdenegro is next.
Thank you, Mayor. So
Okay, thank you.
I think it's kind of two-part I want to say about Diane. I think it's more just making sure that there's a corrective action put in place. I don't think we're looking to find any contract, but I'm saying I had a heat-related incident about 10 years ago where for like working 2 hours in the shade in the summer, and I wasn't sweating, so I didn't think I was in any danger. And then I hit my thumb. I had a spike of adrenaline. I started getting very dizzy. I went to go sit down in the cafeteria, and I fainted. And it happened quickly. I recovered quickly, but after that, it took me about 45 minutes to really get back to where I could stand up and not be Now, after that incident happened, we told our supervisor director right away. Then we had like a safety meeting to make sure I was recognizing the signs. Now, the signs were, that day, I was not sweating at all. There was a breeze and I was in the shade, but I didn't recognize that in that time I was losing water the entire time I was in the summertime. So after that, we made sure that, and I'm much more now careful drinking water all the time. I think having the contractors, and I'll use this as an example, if the contractor recognized that Lupe had an incident and we've corrected the situation with Lupe, but we didn't tell everyone else what happened, then we are not we're not correcting the issue. I would just say that make sure that if they're self-reporting, we can just make sure that, okay, did you address all the other the employees, just to make sure we don't have a repeat of the exact same thing. It could be something very, very simple. And that would be my only concern, because I went through it, it's scary, and it happened, and I didn't think I was in any danger, because I, again, was working, it was in the middle of summer, I was in the shade for like 2 or 3 hours, and I just happened to hit my thumb with a hammer, and I got dizzy quickly, and I fainted, and luckily I was able to, a coworker was there to help me up, and I didn't think I was in any danger, because again, I didn't think I was, because I wasn't sweating, I wasn't losing any water but again, I had to read up on it, and thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess I'm a little confused because there already is a reporting requirement, is there not? There already is a reporting requirement. So if there's an incident, they're supposed to report it to the state, or am I missing something?
Mayor, Vice Mayor Tolmachov, yes. ADOSH has a requirement of reporting of any incidences if it pertains to the state's program, which is combating heat-related illnesses.
So I mean, I don't want to overburden businesses with they've got to report it to the state, they got to fill out a workman's comp report, and then they got to file a report with the city. They're already reporting an incident. So I don't want to, put the burden on businesses to have to do another now a third step. And I guess, do we have access to the ADOSH database where, we could, when we could just check the database and see if this contractor appears to have problems with heat-related incidents with their employees, we could look at that and not have to have, and then, not to have, and then if they're reporting to the city, who's going to take the reports? As Councilmember Guzman said, what are they going to do with them? Like, where does that department even exist in the city? I feel like, I think we're good with B. We could always, if we found out that there really is a big problem, go back later and add a reporting requirement to reporting to the city. But I don't even know where would that go. We'd have to set something up for that, I would think, that we don't have, that doesn't exist right now. And the fact is, if somebody, I'm sure probably they had to report your incident to the state, and probably, workman's comp in the event you filed a claim and couldn't come back to work. It's all been reported. So I just don't want to overburden businesses with having to fill something else out with us. And then also maybe creating some sort of database or something where we're going to store this information and who's going to take the reports and enter it and all of that kind of thing. That's just seems that there's a cost to us for doing that too. So I feel like we'd be really making a big step with an additional requiring it in the contracts, letting the contractors know that this is our expectation and we want to know what you're going to do to protect your employees. I think that's a really big step in the right direction. And if we find out that there's still a problem, then we can address it by maybe going a step further. So I think just for me, B is good for a big first step.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councilman Tomashoff kind of expressed my feelings that there are agencies that this gets reported to, and we don't want to take on the responsibility. B says that the city has no responsibility other than to put the language in the contract, and I think that's okay. And if we want to add language that says that they are required to report to the state or federal agencies when an incident happens, I don't have a problem with that. But I don't want them reporting to us and taking our employees' time to record it and track it and do all that. I don't think that's appropriate. I think there are agencies that already do that, And that's their responsibility, and they should continue to do that. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor.
Who asked? Go ahead.
So just to wrap up the conversation, I would like to ask for the consensus for B, and also just to clarify that we would have access to the state database of incidences, or at least request that information if we did that request. Is that correct?
Mayor and Councilmember Conchas, we can ask what that database is and how accessible it is, but the information that I got was simply a phone call from one of our safety managers in the water department who called up and asked ADOSH, how many inspections do you do and how many were cited, and we got that information right away. Whether there's an open database that's available to us, or do we have to reach out and find out, I don't know.
Okay.
It could be something we could ask.
Thank you. So yes, Mayor, I would like to ask for consensus for B. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, is there a consensus for item B?
Yes.
Yes.
There you go. Okay. Next up, city manager's report.
Yes, Mayor, members of council, we'll roll the, this month's presentation. Hello. There's a lot to celebrate this May, so let's just jump into what's happening across the city. Believe it or not, Glendale Sports Entertainment District is about to get even better, with new restaurants and businesses on the way. Diversified Partners recently broke ground on an 8-acre project at 91st Avenue and Cardinals Way, just steps from State Farm Stadium. Soon you'll be able to grab a drink at Starbucks or Swig, enjoy a meal at Senior Sushi, Nautical Bowls, or McDonald's, or satisfy your sweet tooth at Jeremiah's Italian Ice. There will also be a barbershop, nail salon, and dentist. Before you dive into summer fun, the Glendale Fire Department is making water safety a top priority. They held a workshop at Glendale Community College to teach adults and kids simple tips to save lives. Firefighters explained the importance of adult supervision, enrolling kids in swimming lessons, and using fences or barriers around pools. A mock drowning helped show how quickly things could escalate and why fast action matters. What was once a blooming rose farm will soon be Glendale's latest tech hub. Align Data Centers just broke ground on a cutting-edge facility. This high-tech center will handle massive amounts of digital data and computing power, and they're doing it sustainably, using renewable energy, smart cooling systems, and water-saving technologies to keep everything green. Glendale is proud to put our employees' health first, and we recently won an award for it. The Phoenix Business Journal recognized us for our outstanding health and wellness programs during the Healthiest Employer Awards. We were thrilled to rank in the top 10 for large companies. Arbor Day took root in O'Neill Park with a full day of shovels and smiles. Our staff welcomed 100 second graders from William C. Jack Elementary for hands-on learning. The kids explored stations and learned how trees clean the air, provide shade, and make our city even more beautiful. They even helped plant new trees in the park. Glendale is proud to be recognized as a Tree City USA for 30 years. This honor from the Arbor Day Foundation goes to cities that are dedicated to planting and caring for trees to make our communities healthier. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with more updates soon.
Next up, City Attorney's Report. Mr. Bailey.
No report.
Thank you. Council items of special interest. Council has the opportunity to indicate topics that they'd like to have discussed in the future at a future workshop. Councilmember Baldenegro, have you any?
No, sir.
Councilmember Conchas?
No, sir.
Councilmember Guzman?
No, sir.
Councilmember Melner?
Yes, I do, Mayor. I have a couple of statements I'd like to read, and then I'll ask my item of special interest. The practice of adding fluoride compounds to drinking water is known as community water fluoridation. It has been a mainstay of American public health policy since 1950 and continues to enjoy the support of government health agencies, dentists, and numerous others in the medical and scientific community. Many are surprised to learn that unlike the pharmaceutical-grade fluoride into their toothpaste, the fluoride in their water is an industrial waste product. Only a handful of countries fluoridate their water, such as Australia, Ireland, Singapore, Brazil, and the United States. Western European nations have largely rejected the practice. Nonetheless, dental decay in Western Europe has declined at the same rate as in the United States over the past half century. However, the arguments and data used to justify fluoridation in the mid-20th century, as well as the fierce commitments to the practice, remain largely unchanged, failing to take into account a shifting environmental context that may well have rendered it unnecessary or worse. My council item of special interest is to look into the removal of addition of fluoride in our drinking water.
You have just one item? Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I want to be added to that council item of special interest also.
Okay. Councilmember Turner.
Not today, Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Nothing today, Mayor.
Councilmember Guzman, you have anything?
No, just to be added to that.
Okay. And then I have nothing to add. Motion to go into executive session.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed,
Aye.
vote. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, vote nay. Very good. Okay, ayes have it. Motion carries. Council meeting is recessed.